Over to you, Paresh, sir.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. This is a part of the CASI Knowledge series where we invite senior management professionals and practitioners from across the world and we try to understand executable advice. So, this session is going to be very interesting. We have people from across the world, we have some very senior dignitaries with us, and today is Diwali. So, before starting the session, happy Diwali to each and everyone, happy Diwali to all of you. So we go on to Vimla ma'am as a keynote speaker. But before that, I have a question for Vimla ma'am. If you could quickly answer that before showing us your presentation. You are a promoter, and you are promoting something called as Dasha Shruti.
Yes.
So could you quickly tell us, tell the audience today, what is Dasha Shruti? How does it connect to our everyday life? How does it help us?
Right. This is basically, when I was working in my previous organization, Maharashtra State Rural Livelihoods Mission, I was a chief executive officer there. And normally when the livelihoods program was designed, they felt that there are 5 principles which get women or their families out of poverty. And they said that, regular meetings, a group should be formed, social inclusion, which includes the poorest and the most vulnerable people. They make groups and become, because of coming in groups, the community gives you strength. And then they teach them how to save, because most of the people in rural India or anywhere in the world, you find they don't understand the value of saving money. When you earn money, you just spend it out without even realizing what your future is there for you. We all live in EMI, cultures also ourselves many times. So making them understand what is savings, and then lending money, because money lenders is one of the biggest problems in most of the communities which are exploited. So third sutra is internal lending and repaying those loans. The groups where I was working, all of them were known to pay back the loans they are taking in time. 93% or 95% was the repayment of loans, and then writing books of accounts. So these were the Pancha Sutras, which was basically designed by National Rural Livelihoods Mission, which is a World Bank aided project. And Maharashtra, of course, added 5 more principles because they just felt that economic growth is not important. So they added 5 sutras which are social, and they're part of the SDGs also. So the most important being health, nutrition, and sanitation, which is the most important aspect, and then education, and then participating in the institutions, Panchayati Raj. If we have in India, as you know, there are institutes from the village to the district level. So participating, and then getting all your entitlements, and finally sustainable livelihoods is what we are going to talk about. So those are I realize that for any rural community to come out of poverty or to become, self-independent and manage yourself, these sutras hold the key, because they're not only economic, they're also social, and they're also enabling you to empower yourselves. So that was when I understood 4 years back, these sutras, they're the principles actually, and I stand by them, and it enabled me also as a person to grow.
Mm-hmm. Sure, thank you very much for that. Can we have your presentation, please, Vimla ma'am?
Yeah, there's no presentation. I'll just be having a talk.
Sure.
I'm not making it a very formal one. So, yeah. So, namaste to all of you. And it's great to be, together with all of you on this occasion. And I must thank CASI for, inviting me, and also linking government with, CSR, when most companies would not want to touch CSR with a barge pole and government together. There's always this thing, whether when you go to a government, how they will behave, what will be the reaction, what will be the outcome. These kind of, thoughts and confusions are always there in the minds of the people. I'm really thankful that, I have this opportunity to speak on this forum and this platform, where I'll be reaching out to many people through you. And this idea could be probably generated, because influencing even a single person, it's like lighting so many lives. So I'm really thankful for this opportunity. And also, as I said, Diwali. Diwali is a time, when we all celebrate. In India, it's a totally different thing, just like probably when you have Christmas or Thanksgiving, a lot of celebration happening. Everyone wants to, go out and purchase and enjoy jewelry, clothes, food, everything. It's like the works. But this time, unfortunately, as we all know, and everyone in the world is going through a very tough time. Everyone is learning to survive. We've understood through the last, 7 or 8 months that survival is the main, crux and the real key issue, which is now, bothering each one of us. So I personally feel that this Diwali is like, for survival. And I must thank that, like when I committed for this webinar, I didn't know that we would be on the, eve of Diwali when you're, speaking and interacting. It's a very important festival for most of us who are here today. But I'm really thankful that at the same time, we are discussing that. Because while some of us are really fortunate to be having, a home, probably incomes where we can manage our lives, there are several others whose lives have had an upheaval of so many kinds, physically, financially, socially, emotionally. And it's been a really tough time for most of these people who are like struggling like anything, to make ends meet. And at that time, that we normally light a diya. So I feel personally writing the single lamp, as together as a group, we are meeting today from people from, like, I can see Ariel is there from Switzerland, Europe and China, and people from India. And I'm sure many other people are listening to us. So lighting that lamp, of hope in people's life, that is what we're discussing. Sustainability is what we're discussing, and impact investment, which we are discussing, because each one of us wants to make that difference. And which other time than Diwali? Because when we celebrate and, enjoy this culture of, having endowments or tithing, it's, not that only related to India or Hinduism per se. Every culture, every community, if you look back in our history, whether it was Christ, whether it was Buddha, whether it was all the Hindu mythology, Ramayana, Mahabharata, anything, you pick up any religious scripture, they all talk about tithing, they all talk about endowments, they all talk about sustainability, giving to the society as much as you receive for yourself, because in giving there is joy. There's more pleasure, there's more happiness, So this Diwali, I hope that, that change we will see. And the coming Christmas also, the season's greetings will be there for that too. So I think we should probably, this is the best time when, let's not spend on our clothes again. Let's not splurge on those things. Let us think of how we can make a positive change in some people's lives. I have been, had the opportunity at being the cutting edge of government for a considerable time. And this corporate social responsibility, the word is like, so bombastic, it's like there previously there was NGOs, and then, you have the word corporate is added and social responsibility is added. Together, it becomes a huge responsibility, I think, emotionally, socially, and financially also. But I've observed one thing, which most people, I have found that, 30 years ago, when I was working in rural Maharashtra, we have companies, oil companies, I'm not named particular companies, and many people, when they come for CSR, the idea is of donating blankets or donating food. It's a cliche thing which is always there in the back of their mind, that when you talk about, CSR, when you talk about donating, it's always these material things. Nobody is probably thinking that how you change the livelihoods, how do you contribute to that? And I observed this particularly when in my last assignment, as I mentioned, where I even understood what Dasha Sutra is. There were a lot of companies who used to come. I was working for Rural Livelihoods Mission. We've been able to create 5 million self-help groups, like 5 million women have joined the groups, and we have like about 0.50 million 500,000 self-help groups which are there, which is actually leading to all these group activities to sustainable livelihoods. And my consistent effort there in the last 4 years was that corporates should come and understand that we have brought women to one particular level, and beyond that level, what do they need? They've started small businesses, they want to do small things. What does one require after that? One requires hand-holding, that what is business, how do you go to a bigger market, what is branding, how do you polish your product, how you go online. So rural communities are struggling with most of this. And I made most of my attempts whenever I went, I was invited to several forums. Thankfully, a lot of friends are there who keep inviting you to talk there. And at every forum, I used to, consistently request that we don't need any big money from you. We don't want you to give us, something very big. It's not money all the time. It's not that you have to make very big contributions. the smallest thing you can do is, make people understand what their businesses can become better. Like Facebook makes some attempt to make people outreach their products and, reach out to more and more people. So I felt these were the things which could help. And even now, I hope through this forum. But I found that very few people come forward. Ultimately, there's a lot of discussion which happens. And as much as with corporates, which people come, they were the biggest names used to come. But the only actual thing which I could really take forward to was one of the projects which was known as Internet Sathi with the Tata Trust. So they trained about like 2,000 or 3,000 women to become internet promoters of livelihoods, and how to reach out to people, how to market online. So that was the only positive thing which really happened in the span of 4 years, and that also got left in between, because after that period ended, so I'm not very sure even today that the people whom we trained, whether they have reached that last mile of making that change in the society by whatever training they got, whatever support was given by the company. So I feel that, many times also people look at government with suspicion. But I also found that as much as bureaucracy is there in many of the corporates which are there, I'm sure that it is much more, with due respects to all the corporates, certainly is much more than what a government thing is. And with a person like me who was very open to have more and more support, I found that somehow a bit wanting, So I feel that more and more corporates should feel and contribute to government institutions, because then you get a result. You know that there is a vision to take the program forward, and you can reach to the last mile. So hopefully things will change, and many of the corporates who are listening and many of the corporates who will join would probably find value in associating themselves with government projects, which would probably show the results, have some impact. Because today we are also talking about impact investment. So nobody wants to, put in money where you're not going to see the result. And it's very natural. Why would you want to, put in your penny into something which is not really going to fetch you results, or which is not going to show you having made contribution somewhere? And I'm sure government also looks at that, because these days, previously there was not very much emphasis on impact evaluation or monitoring. But with every program of the government, I find now that there's a lot of emphasis on impact evaluation, on the assessment of what has been done for the society, how it is really contributing to the growth of the people. So I'm sure it's going to be win-win for both of, the person who's investing and for the government to take this forward. So I hope somewhere in the mind, with my previous job, which is very close to my heart, I don't think I'll ever be able to get it out of my system, because it's become my heart and soul. Because working for the cause of women has been so empowering for me personally as an individual. Also, it showed me a whole perspective of another personality, of how probably I could make change in my own life and in the life of others. So that's something which I hold really close to my heart. But now that I'm in my new avatar, and I'm now propagating water, and as the mission director of Jal Jeevan Mission, so I just thought that I should highlight a few points before I leave from here, that what could be the possible support where people could probably contribute. CSR can be contributing for things which can be possibly done, and for that the most important thing is water quality. So when we look at CSR, or when we look at people wanting to contribute, I feel that testing points is something where we need water sources is needed somewhere, and people need to get water quality tested, so that we have more and more certified labs, and water quality is ensured for the people of rural Maharashtra. So that is probably something anyone who's listening here who wants to support us could probably look at. When we look at water, also the surface quality of the water is something. Most of the water schemes are related to water surface. So water is at the source level. We're not looking more at underground, looking at water from the rivers or from the ponds or the lakes. So it becomes very important. How do you manage surface water? So that is something we can look at strengthening. One of my colleagues we had a seminar recently, and he came up with a very beautiful idea. He was saying that, if we construct like type of structures along the bridge, a bridge kind of thing, so water will collect in that, will seep. So to create that kind of a thing, it needs about 1 crore of rupees, but who will probably invest in that? So there are many ideas which could really say on conserving water. So that could be there. Probably, effluent treatment. Water has to be basically clean water. You find many times that water gets contaminated because there's no proper way of, discharge of water. So that could probably be something which CSR activity could look at. Operation and maintenance. Many times you find that villages don't have the capacity to sustain themselves and to maintain, though it is a part of your own community to maintain, but at times government, despite spending much, or community despite spending much, is not really able to save on that. So that could probably be a source, and this could also generate livelihood. So what I suggest that if CSR people want to really train people to become fitters or plumbers, so there is a scope that you have, given a livelihood to a person and trained them to take care of their community assets. At the same time, you are able to develop sustainable assets. Even the water quality is maintained, maintenance is done properly. So it becomes a combined thing. Then there is also a component where I feel that women, since it's very close to my heart, and self-help groups are there in this. So similarly, we can enhance the capacity of women because they are ultimately the users of water. So if you see normally in India, I think many of you may have seen women carrying water on their heads from a source because it's not available. I'm sure it must be happening in many rural communities in Africa or sub-Saharan African countries or many other Latin American countries. Probably this must be happening where people have to go and fetch water, and especially this onus of getting water is essentially coming on women. So this probably, they could be taught how to value water, how to maintain water. And also there's a lot of contamination with certain chemicals. Probably sometimes fluoride is there or arsenic is there. So how does one ensure that water is not contaminated? How do you maintain that? So this kind of assessment and water ATM setting up so that people get pure water for drinking, and it is also maintained as an asset. This could probably be ensured through some support from companies who have innovative ideas and solutions for reaching out to women and to people. Also, watershed, like basically, this is a concept which is going on for centuries, ridge to valley. We keep on talking that how do you maintain water? How do you conserve water? So starting from the top and coming to the bottom, it's been, churned in different ways and discussed in different ways. But we still find that when people talk about watershed, it is not done in the appropriate way still at times. So probably CSR could be, used to rejuvenate these ideas and look at water for, sustainability of water and groundwater, especially recharging of that. So like you find that exploited surfaces are so high anywhere in the world because of the desire to have more water. The per capita use of water is increasing so much. So you find that people also store water more, or probably don't really value water in that sense. So they could be educated on the importance of recharging, whether it's water harvesting structures or simple methodology with which people can, start understanding how to save water and how to conserve water. So these are probably some of the things which could really, be like an impact investment, where people could be told to have inexpensive methods of maintaining their water sources which are there, or manage their water sources which are there. So probably these are some of the ideas I would like to, leave back in your mind. And also this idea that sustainability, when we talk about it, is not limiting to very short-sighted goals like probably you invest in donating clothes or donating few material things. Changing the ideology of the person, changing the thought process of the people, getting community together is what I feel is sustainable livelihoods, and what is Dasha Sutri, which we propagate in NRLM philosophy, and which I really feel that when you work as a community, when you give strength to the community, because I've seen that women, once they have understood in this organization where I was working for, MSRLM, they are the torch bearers of change, and they are the change makers. Like, I'll just, before I leave you, a very simple example of Nutri Gardens, which we propagated. So we had to spend a little money. We have spent about 10 crores of rupees for propagating this idea overall in the last span of 4 years. But now this idea has been ingrained so much amongst the people that when we had a campaign recently in COVID, during the times of COVID, for about 20 days. So we had a target of 30,000 and people made 95,000 Nutri Gardens. That is, and we did not invest a single paisa in that. This was just motivation, and people went out of their way to do that. Rural communities did not have to buy vegetables from outside. They consumed their own grown vegetables. So change is possible. One has to have the desire. And I hope corporates who will be listening to this program will reach out to me specifically for water and for livelihoods. Of course, rural livelihoods missions are not only there in Maharashtra, they're all over the country, and I'm sure there's such kind of activities happening all over the world, whether in Europe from where Ariel is there, or Mr. Lund is there from China, and several others who are listening to us. It's not only related to one country. Every country is wanting to make change in society. So all the people who are benefactors and beneficiaries and people who want to make that change, reach out to you and I request you that if you want to make a sustainable change, participate with an organization which really is passionate about this change. And I thank again CSI for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to meet all of you. I wish you all a very happy Diwali and coming Christmas cheer also. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vimla ma'am, for that presentation. One can see that you are really involved in the causes that you are working. You really spoke from the heart. So that was amazing. Let me answer a question you asked. Why does CASI involve the government? So I'll give you a bit of our background. We started CASI in order to train people. So I said, let's go around the world training people in CSR and sustainability, and that is where I started this company in New York. So CASI is a large company in New York, a limited company, and now we are present in 52 countries. We teach CSR and sustainability and related topics, so innovation, sustainable manufacturing, and related things. And that was around a decade back. And we have a pretty large presence in India, a million students, and so on. And 3 years back, I started a volunteering platform, and it was just to tell my own two children and all my friends children to go and do some volunteering. Yeah, so it was not a business model. It was something that I started by default and not design. But in 3 years time, now we are one of the world's largest volunteering platforms with a reach of 3 million volunteers.
Wow.
Yeah, in India alone. So and in 3 years time, so yes, the going has been good. It has been exceptional, and particularly because it was by default. Yeah. So when we crossed a million volunteers, I didn't know what to do. We had no idea what to tell them to do, because when we started, we said clean Jew beach, plant trees, collect plastic, and so on. But when we crossed a million volunteers in the first year itself, we had no idea what to do. So we called a few IAS officers, our friends, and asked them how can we use this, use this force. It's a very large force. So they guided us into doing events for the government. So we started with road safety for MMVD and PWD department. We created 2 world records. On the same day, at the same time, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7.5 lakh people turned up on the streets to promote road safety. And that is how we started working with the government. Now we are actually lending our volunteers to the government. That we can you can use my volunteering force to promote various causes. So currently we are promoting financial literacy, women empowerment, road safety, international policies, and a couple of other causes for the government. And that is how we really started working with the government. So it was just to lend our volunteers, because I said I have so many people. Please tell me what to do. I don't know what to do with them. So that is how we started. Before I go on to Ariel, I have one more question for you, Vimla ma'am. You have a very interesting CV, a master's of philosophy from Pune, and somewhere you mentioned about poetry. Where does this poetry background come from? Is it something that you did from childhood, or parental background, or what? Or is it an alternate career which you are thinking for yourself?
This was actually just by chance, writing was there. I used to write in English, but I had, when I went for my training, to the academy, the Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Administration. That was where I met one of my colleagues, and she's also a poet, Sumedha Kataria. Presently, she's chief administrator of Haryana Agricultural Board. And then we used to exchange notes in Hindi, and then she said, why don't you write? So I don't know, it was just destiny, or maybe I don't know. I just wrote, and it just happened. So I wrote poems, and I've been writing in Hindi poems. I'm also a blogger, of course, but that is in English. But my poems are in Hindi, and it's been good. It's a nice experience to be creative. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring out the other side of the IAS officer, Vimla. So
I
that
see.
is really why I asked this question.
Right.
Ariel, you are next. So we would like to have a presentation from you. Before that, I have a question for you. In 1982, um, you joined the Institute of Shipboard Education and tried to do a semester at sea. Now that is again a very interesting aspect. I find you very interesting as a person. I don't know how you handle it, being on the Legends magazine, doing so many things at the same time. You have unbelievable energy. So we will go into that. I have a few more questions for you on that. But
Thank
before
you.
that, we would really like to
So
know about the Institute of Shipboarding Education and a semester at sea in 1982.
wonderful. I was 20 years old in 1982, and
Mhm,
I went on a program called Semester at Sea, which is a luxury ship, not a small one that went around the world to 13 countries.
mhm,
And it was my first time out of the United States of America, which was kind of interesting. And I was with, I think, about 500 other young people and about 500 crew. The ship was out of Hong Kong by a young man named C.Y. Tong, who was an orphan who had decided that he wanted to figure out a way to bring people together. And he was in the shipping industry, and he had decided to take one of his crew to a place for young people to meet and to learn about the world by literally going into the world. So we went to 30 countries around the world in 100 days. And I would say that changed my life. It changed my perspective about people. It changed my perspective about myself. And one of my favorite countries was India. So
uh-huh.
um, one of our favorite docks. It was at the time we called it Bombay. We didn't call it Mumbai, and I loved it. I really really loved it.
Ah, nice to know that. Can we have a presentation, Ariel?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to learn how to share my screen here. Let's see if I can. Can you all see the screen? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. First, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak today. I really do appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to speaking about this issue. I really agree with my colleague also that it's really important for government and private entities, foundations, universities, individuals, community activists, even just your local person to work together because together we're stronger. Oops, let me see. I'm trying to figure out. Okay. So, once again, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's wonderful to be here with my colleagues. I just want to start and Joe about sustainable development when we talk about sustainable development. And it's so important to know that no matter what industry, no matter where we're coming from in terms of either organizations or government or business, all of us have a possibility to work specifically in one of these this sustainable development goals. There are 17 of them. And basically the truth is they cover all of our lives. Anything that has to do with our life, it covers. Whether it's hunger or its structure or livable cities, gender, anything you can think of, partnerships, peace, anything and everything is possible. So, sustainable development goals can only be possible in terms of actually trying to make them work and to make them a reality when we all share in them, which means that we all try to figure out what can we do. We don't have to do everything, but we can all do something. And that includes companies, businesses, individuals, and foundations. So I wanted to share this because I thought it was very interesting, and this is actually a publication that can be found, and this is achieving the industry-related goals and targets. And I thought it was very interesting because this particular report looks at how sustainable development can be specifically through industry and through businesses, which I think is extremely important. So here's a better way to see what we have, and basically it covers every part of life. There's not one part of life that these 17 goals don't touch, except I said I'd like to make an 18th, which is empowerment of children and youth. So I think that if they had an 18th goal, then all of these other 17 goals would go pretty well. So I'm just putting here just the goals so you can see quickly. This presentation will be available on our website and also hopefully on the other website. So if I'm going too fast, you'll be able to look through them. And once again, this is just a written format of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I just want to talk a bit about AFI. And the reason why I'd like to do that is because I'd like to share with all we look at corporate social responsibility, and specifically when it comes to sustainable development, which for our organization is extremely important because our organization, our major focus is children and youth, and not just empowering them, but literally allowing them to take the forefront of working and developing and being a part of the, the implementation of what needs to happen for our world together. So we started in 2000, and we became in 2002 a NGO under the 501c3, which is with the government. We have EcoSoc consultative status with the United Nations, which is a special status. Just to give an idea about that, right now there are about 2,000 organizations in the world with EcoSoc status. Out of the 2,000, just about 10% are actually active with the United Nations. They actually do something with that status. That's about 200 organizations. Of the 200 organizations, there are about 3 organizations that specifically work with children and youth all over the world. And out of the 3 organizations, our organization is the only organization that actually accredits young people, children and youth, to the United Nations, and also allows them to participate directly at the European Parliament. So we are unique in the world. And if you look at our values, it really says partnering. It's not just with developing countries, but with developing countries um, for the lives of children and their youth. And more importantly, directing human and financial resources to the people that we work with. So basically, AFI change makers, it's Ariel Foundation International Change Makers. These are young people, and these young people are the heart of what we do. Without these young people, what we do would not matter, and the truth is we wouldn't even exist. Um, and so working with children and young people is extremely important because, as all of you know, more than 50% of the world's population is over 35. In many countries, it's almost 75% of the population is under 25. When you have such a large population all over the world that are children or young adults, it's really important to directly engage them in whatever type of goals the government, business, community services might have, because without them, there's no way that we can actually accomplish them. So by saying, will you help us empower youth? So this is where AFI has served. These are all the different countries. I think we're missing some. For example, we also did work in Russia. And this is not all the countries, but many of them. And I think also we have Turkey, Italy. So this is only some of the countries, but we've done more. So AFI has worked all over the world and continue to do that. And so this just gives you an idea. And you see some of the photos on the bottom. These are actual pictures of um, the events and what we've done with young people. You can see some of them look at the United Nations themselves, and several of them is at the United Nations. And one was actually walked throughout Europe, looking at advocating for children who have been abused, and more importantly, actually changing the age of responsibility for making decisions about whether or not to engage in activity. That's in Scotland. So some of our programs are for both children and youth. So when we talk about children, usually we say 6 years old. There are times you have very precocious 5-year-olds, but usually we go from 6 years old to 19, and we go to 19 rather than 18 because many young people don't necessarily finish their higher education or their A levels or high school or secondary level until they're about 19. And then we have also programs for children. So this is a really interesting picture, and it's an interesting picture because you can see we have children in front of the United Nations. We have young people who have gone, almost all of these young people have participated in one program or another, or one event or another, I should say, that has to do with actively being involved in sustainable development. They are investing their time and energy in helping with this idea of sustainability. Not just giving for today, but giving so then there's a possibility for it to then be beneficial again and again, to be sustainable. So these pictures are just a conglomerate of all the young people that we've worked with all over the world. And also up here, I think you see one of the pictures of at an embassy in London with Princess Anne. I'm there in the green, but you can't see me, so you just see hair. And we were working at the time on acid violence, which is also a very, very important issue for young people and children. Here's some of the publications that we've done with the foundation. And all the publications are actually written by children or youth. I would say that out of the 43 publications that we've had, I've only had it literally maybe 2 or 3 words in 2 publications because they did not meet protocol. These publications specifically are after young people have participated within the United Nations, the European Parliament, the Human Rights Council, uh, various programs. And what they do is they decide on what's important, what they think is important, and even more importantly, they actually try to figure out what can they do about it. How can they contribute to answering the challenge, the issue that's before them. And these young people are really amazing. All of these publications are then sent back through the system to the United Nations, to the European Parliament. I don't know if it's on here, but we've also had programs at the Parliament in the United Kingdom, and we've also had programs at the Parliament in Senegal, and hope to continue to do that at several other parliaments. The young people decide on the issue. They decide on what they're going to write about, and they literally, this is their voice. And this is one way also to help not just multilateral organizations, but even corporate organizations to understand what are young people thinking about. This helps them to put their hand on the pulse of understanding what's important to young people and how they're engaging in an international forum. Also with children, I think we have about 5 or 6, maybe more, about 6+ reports from children. That's young people under the age of 19. Here's some testimonials. I haven't read them for a while. So, Ariel Foundation is the most passionate personalities that work on youth and children's rights and issues. Um, and they're talking about the way that not just me, but the entire team, all of us are volunteers. So I get a lot of credit for what we do, but that's not correct because the truth is we do anything that we do without team. And that includes the board of directors, that includes our young ambassadors, that includes our youth ambassadors, that includes our volunteers and also our members. And all of us together actually make AFI what it is. No one person can ever make AFI what it is. So many young people are very happy with the mentoring they get. They're very happy to actually have a voice. They're pretty shocked when they actually get to participate on an international level at the real United Nations or a real parliament or at the European Union. And also we're looking to do the same in the African Union. But we think that it's imperative for that. So I'm just going to take 1 minute to say that when we look at corporate social responsibility, as my colleague said, it's not just about resources, although all of us know that you can't do anything without resources. And those resources can be time, energy, knowledge, of course, financial, some kind of money, time and investment. But it's almost impossible to do anything without investing within a particular process. So at AFI, we have corporate social responsibility also. And I had decided that instead of just talking about it sustainability and investment, it was really important to show you what does that mean practically for an organization like ours. Even more importantly, when we talk about corporate social responsibility, it's not just a matter of getting funding. It's a matter of also of directly participating and being a part of the social movement and the change that they want to see happening. And as a result of the sustainable development goals covering literally everything that we have in the world, it would be very easy for any corporation to partner with government, with NGOs, with others. And it does require partnership in order to get these things done. But since corporations usually do get tax breaks for donations and donations of specific amounts for specific programs, that's also something that's needed and has to be done for various programs. At Ariel Foundation International, I wanted to show you this because I think it's really interesting to actually talk about possibilities, but I think it's even more important to show what organizations talk about and what they ask for when it comes to corporate social responsibility, or if they're asking for donations. For AFI, we're all volunteers, including myself, for 20 years. All the resources up to, I would say, up to now, literally all the resources that we get go specifically to programs, to young people, to children. And we're looking to change that because when young people take over the foundation, we want to pay them. We were in a very privileged position that when we started in the organization, all of us who started in the organization, many of the people on the board had extremely good jobs and we were very well connected, and we did not need that. For AFI to continue to carry on and to be carry on under the auspices of young people, what does that mean? That means people under 30, more in their 20s, taking over the foundation and bringing it forward. It's really important that we establish a possibility for them to be paid and for them to then carry forth the foundation in years to come for sustainability. So as you can see, we actually have various levels that they can come in on, and the basic level is the bronze level, and then we have up to platinum. So this is just one of the events that we were at, and here is my mobile number if anybody would like to contact me, and also our email address. We are really opening for partnering. We enjoy it, we love it, and it's considered a privilege to partner with various types of people in various organizations, and that's not just businesses. And it's really interesting. We call it a corporate social responsibility, but I think we should really change the name. I think we should change it to partner social responsibility, because your partner doesn't have to be a corporation. Your partner can actually be another organization. It could be schools. It could be government or various government departments. It could be government school. It could be private schools. The truth is that the sustainability and investment doesn't necessarily have to be in corporations or corporate. It's nice, it's good, and this is what we're talking about now. But I think that perhaps we should look at changing the name a bit. So thank you so much, and I'll stop there and ask for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ariel, for that presentation. One question: how do you keep yourself motivated to run so hard? You are everywhere. You make a lot of speeches. You make a lot of people. You are on covers of magazines. What is it that drives you really?
The young people, they're amazing. I, you know, I, I have a vision, and my vision is that nothing about us without us for young people. Just as women at times, my colleague are talking about her passion is women, and I can see a day where we won't have any big major decisions made, or um, people will look for the involvement of young people, because they will understand and know that without the involvement of young people, they can't count on success. And even more importantly, they can't count on the type of implementation that they need for return on investment, the ROI. You can invest, but unless you have young people directly working with you, directly buying into that passion, buying into that idea, working on it, it's not going to happen. So my view is, and my motivation is to actually see within, I would say, 5 years, maybe less, that many organizations, governments, corporations are going to ask for direct input, direct ways of working with young people. And many people don't know how to do it. They want to do it, but they don't know how. And many young people want to be part of it, but they also don't know how. So I consider myself a matchmaker.
No, no, those are great words. I'll tell you why I asked you this specific question. Along with my CSR and volunteering activities, I'm a CEO coach, and usually I talk to a lot of CEOs, CEOs of corporates, large corporates, foundations, and all. And we have a lot of discussions on product changes, innovation, sales, distribution, and so on. But I usually tell them I will force you to change. You see, I have 3 million volunteers in India alone. Yeah. So if you do not listen to the SDGs or the government, or you don't listen to anyone, that's cool. You will need to listen to me because I have 3 million volunteers. And if because these volunteers are the consumers of tomorrow. Yeah. So if 3 million people say that, okay, we will not buy this, or we want this product to change, the company has to change. The government has to change. So that
Absolutely.
that is what it's actually my favorite dialogue. That if you do not change your product process, packaging, distribution, my volunteers will make you change. Because finally they have the buying power. So I can see that we have a lot of similarities in our work. So we will take this offline.
Yeah.
We will do some work together. We should definitely work together. you know
Thank you
and
so much for the privilege of presenting. It was a privilege to be with such an esteemed panel. So thank you so much.
no, no, it's an absolute pleasure to have all of you. We are very happy to have you and Vibla ma'am as speakers. And Patrick is a very close friend. So I'm always happy to have Patrick. He's a very close friend and a very strong promoter of CASI. So with that, we come to our final, speaker for the evening, Patrick. Uh, Patrick, before you tell us your angle and your thoughts, tell us how did you or why did you really become a sustainable development consulting person? Why not a finance guy? Why not manufacturing? Why not start a cafe in Sweden and have a great life? How did you really end up in sustainable development or liking sustainable development?
I'm still considering the financial option. Maybe I'll change. No, I don't know if everyone can hear me. My internet connection seems to be really bad today, but it keeps giving me a warning of low bandwidth.
No, we can hear
We
you.
can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think I told you a little bit. I came into engineering by default, education-wise, and then environmental engineering the same. I've always been interested in nature as a kid, but not like the other speakers who have really campaigned for it. I think growing up in Scandinavia, it's the environment is kind of very good already. So you don't have the same challenges as you have in India and in China and in Africa, for example. And I think that is that's also the answer to why I relocated to China, because that is where the problems are. And I've also made the point many times that the lifestyle in Sweden and Denmark is reliant on production in China and India and other Asian countries. So I think that's, yeah, I think the passion is growing actually as I get older. Before it was more sort of just a good and interesting career, but, and it's also the difference. I mean, some of my work is also for corporations, and a lot of that is more like a finance person because it's risk management. And that's that's why I also try to, in these talks, try to share how corporations' risk management, what it can do, which is good for sustainability, but there's also limitations to that risk management. And if the rest of the world is not aware of those limitations, I think that stops sort of what can be achieved. So when I talk on these CASI presentations, I always try to talk about those limitations as much as possible.
Sure, absolutely. Please tell us your angle on sustainability, Patrick.
Okay. Let me see. I can find this. So, Mites, he got in touch with me quite not so early this time, but I still tried to prepare some slides. So that's the title, Some Slightly Random Thoughts About Impact Investments. Hopefully this will make some sense. So this slide is based on basically what I think it was last week, difficult to keep track, one of the CASI conferences was talking a lot about ESG investments. So there's a lot of ESG funds now, and a lot of money going into ESG investments, which I think is a positive change. But I'm still looking at capital flows going into ESG, and the performance is slightly different. So if there's a lot of money going into a few companies that have the credentials of ESG, of course, the stocks of those companies is going to go up. So then you immediately get sort of capital flow goes in, that means the price goes up and it looks like a good investment. But I think that's slightly different to these companies actually doing well within whatever, within the context of ESG performance. So I think that's an important thing to look at. This is something I recently saw on LinkedIn. Many were posting about Unilever being the most sustainable corporation. And I looked at how they assessed this, and it was something more than 700 sustainability experts who said this was their perception. I think the word was perception. And I would be honest, if anyone asked me to say which corporation I think is the most sustainable, I would not be able to answer that question. I mean, it would simply be a guess. And the reason, the argument I use for Unilever is if you look at, now I have all the videos here in front, but if you look on the right side, you have operations in 160 countries, you have 59,000 suppliers, you have 1,000 brand names. So I think that's more products than brand names. How can you assess sustainability there? I think the complexity is just so huge. And I mean, where I've worked for clients where I know the project that I worked on has done a really good job. But I also hear in the news that that same client has other projects in other regions or which are not sounding so good. So I think that's the challenge. Big corporations can have, there's always good things and there's bad things. So how do you rate that sustainability? I think that's really challenging. And then another thing was also what I think is a potential risk here now is when we have all this flow of money into ESG funds, I think the positive thing is that there will be companies with, as I've written here, good profit margins and strong balance sheets. I think they will have very good incentives to say, we also want to be part of that. We want to ensure that we don't suddenly have our stock price going down or losing liquidity because we are not meeting these new standards. So these companies are going to decide to improve. But my concern is that companies that are struggling to make profits and have weak balance sheets, who are maybe already have a lot of debt, what are they going to do? Because their liquidity is maybe even going to be more challenging. And this is something, when I look at risk, I'm always worried about companies who are not making money, because they're the companies that start taking shortcuts on safety, environmental protection, all these things. And if they're suddenly having even more struggles to find money, what are they going to do? They're not just going to go bankrupt right away, at least. They're going to try and survive. That's what companies do. And even if they go bankrupt, that has a social impact. So that's what I like about, Ariel, you mentioned the sustainability development goals. I think there you have the balance between environmental risks and social risks. So losing a lot of companies and a lot of jobs is not a solution by itself. This is something that I already posted, but I thought it was kind of relevant because we have a lot of people who complain about fossil fuels at the moment, and where I say that smartphone use and the internet, the explosive growth in data centers, and the data centers, big tech companies all saying, well, we only want to use renewable energy from wind farms and solar farms and so on. That's kind of the beautiful, sustainable story that you see. But if you dig a little bit deeper and you look at all the mining required for these wind farms and solar farms, there's a lot of mining going on, and that mining is happening in remote areas, places that don't have a lot of money. And of course, whatever energy they need for those mining activities is going to be the cheapest option, and that's sometimes coal. So you have this kind of, in rich countries, certain things happening, but then other negative impacts happening elsewhere. And I think that's definitely something that's a critical issue. So just finally, this is going back even further with the CASI conferences, there was a talk about the difference between requirements for small and medium enterprises and the large corporations. And I think Facebook, they've mentioned many times that they want more regulations for things on the internet. And I think the reason they want more regulations is because they know their smaller competitors will not be able to meet those requirements. So that will give Facebook a competitive advantage. And I think the same thing, there's a risk of the same thing happening in sustainability, that large corporations can meet all these highly detailed reporting requirements, but of course, small companies can't do that. So I think there should be more requirements for corporations, but there should be a more streamlined option for small, restaurants and so on, that they can still report, and it gives them incentive sustainability, but they shouldn't be able, it shouldn't become this big load that they are unable to meet, and then they become actually negative to the whole process. So that's where I think, and I think also coming back to that question about Unilever, I think, in some ways, I think a small restaurant or a local business actually has a more compelling sustainability story. And if that's something that they can market and have more customers, I think that's something positive. Whereas still having the technology, the connection like today, where we're connecting from different countries, that's of course positive. But I think small, medium enterprises that are local, they don't necessarily need to be high tech. I think a lot of the sustainability can be something that has been around for a long time. I think some of the best foods and so on. I think India has foods that have been around for a long time, and you don't necessarily want high tech to mess with that. So that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Very brief. If there's any questions or answers to my questions that I raised, I'd be happy to have that as well.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that presentation. I have a few questions actually, not answers. Um, let me first give you a compliment. When I was being trained to become a CEO, and I was trained in a bank, a finance company, to become a CEO, and I was a national head. So I was trained by a legend in India, one of the greatest legends in banking. He trained me to become a CEO. So and I was very young. I was 27 years old. I became a CEO at 30. So, when they were training me, I used to ask my boss, how do you have all the answers? How do you know? I don't know. And I talk to 20,000 people. I have a 20,000 sales team. And I don't know. And how do you know? And this became a learning for me in my life, when I was very young. And I get the same feel from you, and that is one of the reasons why I respect your opinion so much. And this guy, this legend who used to train me to become a CEO, he always told me, I do not know, but I have the knack of asking the right questions. I may not have the answers, and that is a knack which, Patrick, you have. So coming back to all your slides, I completely agree with you. I'm a core finance guy. If all the money flows to a few companies working on ESG, then the share prices are bound to rise, and it may look like a good investment, but which is not. And then what happens to the other companies? I totally agree on that Hindustan Lever example which you gave. I usually give a similar example on H&M. H&M is an apparel brand. They apparently have around 1,600 manufacturing locations around the world, and they are giving a guarantee that they are following SDGs. So no child labor in places like Philippines, Vietnam, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India. Now, how do they do that? 1,600 locations, no child labor in China, Philippines, Vietnam. How can, I mean, I don't know. They give a guarantee. I'm sure they must be doing a good job. But within my heart, I always ask, how can they do that? How is it possible? 1,600 locations across Vietnam. So I completely agree with you. And going to your second last slide on allowing that, you already know my opinion. See, we are trying to start a ESG exchange, an international ESG exchange, CASI ESG exchange, because we already have a presence in 52 countries. And my thoughts actually resonate your thoughts, saying we should allow the small tea stall guy to prove himself, and maybe he can get more customers by only complying with the E or the S or the G. Why an ESG for a tea stall guy? Let it be for the larger corporations. Let the smaller people at least fall in line, and someday they will reach 100%.
Yeah.
Already there on the negatives. So completely agree with you, and that is one of the theories at CASI. When we set up a new product or new business lines, we really work like that. So I completely 100% agree with you. But let me keep it open for the viewers. Ariel, Mitesh, Siddiqui, Mr. Kamal, Vimla ma'am, do you have a question for Patrick?
See, like, there's always, it's a very, chicken and egg situation. I personally feel, when you look at corporates or anyone, when it comes to ESG, it's very easy to, discuss about responsibilities for other people, and when it comes to yourself, probably it's a bit difficult, for most companies, I feel. So when you talk about aligning to uh, rules and regulations, and probably environmental safety, so though there'll be a lot of study and impact, and we all know that many times they're tailored to fit many companies. So these all things keep happening. So how does one really find a way out? It's, because one side development is important, and at the second at the same breath, you have to take care of, everyone is talking about glaciers melting and every day global warming. All these things are there. So it's a very difficult thing. What do you think?
No, I agree. I agree. That's why my presentations are always about the difficulties and not about. Um, I'm never able to say this is all so simple. You should just do 1, 2, 3, and then everything will be solved. Unfortunately, 20 years ago, when I started my career, I saw everything that way, but not anymore. Um, that's that's sort of the difference, I think. The more you see, the more you understand the challenges and the complexity, and you solve one thing on the left side, and then something shifts on the other side. Uh, but I still think that understanding that is more important than just believing 1, 2, 3. So that's why I keep raising
Yeah.
raising the difficult issues.
Absolutely. So we are at the end of our session for today. Very interesting one. We now have time for 2, 3 questions. So, the speakers can ask questions to each other, or anyone. If you have questions, please. Mitesh, do you have a question?
No, I don't have any question. I was just reaching out to our viewers. Was waiting if there are any questions from them, but none.
Okay. So with that, we would, we come to
have a
the end
question.
of. Oh, very nice. Please.
I have a question to Vimala regarding the water contamination. You mentioned that in your presentation, water quality is an issue. What are the main causes of that water contamination? Is that industrial activities, or is it just from the villages themselves? I mean, what kind of context is it that contamination?
So it can be either, man-made, like a lot of, suppose it's like some industries are the effluents flowing into water, because treatment of water which happens, earlier in villages where the rivers were much more non-polluted. So you find that even like rural places or semi-urban places have a lot of industries coming up, so the effluent is not treated. Then apart from that, fertilizers, I feel that is one of the most important things, using inorganic fertilizers specifically. So mainly lead would be there, and other things which are coming from the fertilizers which are contaminating the soil, and then when there is rain, and then lead content, specifically lead is quite harmful basically, and fluoride is there in some places already. Have arsenic and fluoride in some of the places. So it is either the groundwater itself which is contaminated for reasons of the geography, or it can be man-made. So both ways it is up to us. Like organic farming, if you go for, then one can protect the soil from getting contaminated with chemicals, basically. And
Yeah.
that some of the water already has fluoride content, which is much higher. Maybe at least in Maharashtra we don't have arsenic much, but fluoride is a problem in Maharashtra definitely. So those things have to be treated like.
Yeah, those are serious. I mean, so what you're saying is organic. I mean, more organic farming is then
Yeah,
also improving the water quality as
right. That
well.
will help. Yeah, that will
Yeah.
help.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Challenging. Definitely not easy. So.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Vimla ma'am, for those answers. At the end of this session, happy Diwali to everyone. Vimla ma'am, would you like to have a few lines on the closing, or maybe you could give us a shairi? I'm hoping.
The Hindi, I don't know whether everyone would like to listen. I probably they'll not follow, but I'll just say, say a few lines which will give, which is basically about hope. Like when I had written this poem, so it says that मन जागो सुबह हुई है, सूरज बनकर आए थे तुम, अंधकार के ग्रहण में चले गए, ग्रहों के जितने भी फेरे हुए, विडंबना यही कि तुम छुपे रहे, मन जागो सुबह हुई है. Basically, one is that there's a lot of, the earth is moving and you have eclipses coming, but you have to keep your mind and your heart with hope and always keep moving forward. And then the second part is, you are the light, the lamp which I was mentioning before, कि आरती का दिया बन गए हो तुम, ना बुझोगे ना उगोगे, प्यार की ज्योत बन गए हो तुम. So basically, you have, each one of us can be that lamp, because everyone cannot be the sun and the star or the moon, but we all can be a little lamp or the candle, probably, which will not go off, which can give light even when the electricity probably goes off. So these are the thoughts I like to leave on the positive note, because Diwali is festival of lights. And I think this is, actually, Paresh was telling me that only the speakers are the listeners, but sometimes even the listeners will be few, but they will communicate to 10 other people, and the 10 other people will communicate to 20 other people, and so the chain goes on. So I hope that this thought, which all the three of us had, Ariel, me, and Mr. Don, and also CASI has brought forth all of us together, should light up many more lives. We have the blessings of God with us. We are fortunate. I hope this platform will reach out to more people who deserve support from us, which Ariel is working for with the foundation. I'm working with the government, and Sloan is working with his own level in supporting sustainability. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vimla ma'am, for that. Thank you very much. That was a befitting closure to the session on Diwali. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Vimla ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.